Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to say welcome and thank you for joining us for this year's Mission Possible student competition. I especially want to extend a welcome to our Board of Visitors, our Alumni Board, and our other distinguished guests that are joining us this afternoon. My name is Tony Castrodale, and I'm a first-year master's student here at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. I have the pleasure of holding the school's Eugene R. Temple Fellowship and serving as the graduate assistant in the Office of the Dean. Prior to coming to the Lilly Family School, I attended the University of Notre Dame, where I completed my undergraduate studies in accounting and worked in their Office of University Relations. Most importantly, I will be one of your co-MCs for today's student competition. One thing that I am passionate about is fostering a relationship between higher education and philanthropy that truly provides equal opportunities for all students to flourish regardless of their background. I look greatly forward to hearing about the passions of our participants this afternoon.
Hello, everybody. I am your other co-MC. My name is Caleb Johnson, and I'm a senior in the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. I'm really passionate about community development in Indianapolis and cross-organizational collaboration, working together towards that common goal. Currently, I'm leading the philanthropic efforts of a growing startup in Indianapolis called CoHatch. We have a gift scholarship, and I work with local nonprofits and give them access to our co-working space. So it's an honor to MC tonight for these amazing speakers, and I'm really happy to be with you all.
So now it's time for the time that you all have been waiting for, the student presentations. 4 undergraduate students and 5 graduate students will be presenting 5x5 presentations, meaning they will have 5 minutes to present 5 slides about an issue they are passionate about, why the issue is important, and the steps they hope to take towards solving the issue. After the completion of the presentation, the judges will determine the top 3 graduate student presentations, as well as the top 3 undergraduate presentations. Those students will be awarded academic scholarships. To our Board of Visitors, you will be serving as our judges for today's competition. You all have scoring packets or scoring sheets in your packets for each student. Unfortunately, we had one undergraduate student who underwent a medical procedure this afternoon and will be unable to join us. Nonetheless, it is now my pleasure to introduce our first undergraduate contestant, Colin Jester. Colin is a senior majoring in both philanthropic studies and international studies. Colin is originally from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and is passionate about economic development in developing countries. He enjoys rock climbing, hiking, cycling, and traveling to new countries. The title of Colin's presentation is Refugees in America.
This is Luckner. Luckner is a Haitian immigrant. About 6 months ago, Luckner voyaged 5,172 miles from Rio de Janeiro to Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is where I'm from. On this journey, Luckner was faced at gunpoint 3 times, robbed twice, and near death to starvation. Oh, and by the way, he did this with his 6-month pregnant girlfriend. But why do we care? Why do you care? What do I care? We see photos like these all the time. Mass migrants of people traveling from one place to another due to famine, war, etc. And these photos we see all the time on the news, but why should you care? I met Luckner about a month ago at Pizza Hut after church, and I got to be face-to-face with him and hear about his story. And when you see someone and meet them face-to-face, you realize the importance of their need. About 2 months ago, 200 Haitian immigrants came from Haiti to Fort Wayne, Indiana. These 200 Haitians were paying $800 per month to live in a hotel, a place not adequate for living, not adequate to raise a family. And many of these people had families ranging from 4 to 12 people. A lot of them were kids, and they have little to no connections outside of their community and relatives. By 2030, there is an estimated 54 million immigrants going to be living in the United States, and that is a growing issue, and it'll keep going. Hope Global is an organization that my family and I started about a month ago, after hearing the stories from Luckner and hearing stories like him. Hope Global assists in providing affordable housing for immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. This house is actually a house that we bought and we're going to keep on growing and getting more houses. But Luchner actually lives in this house currently right now with his girlfriend and soon-to-be son. We also partner with paralegals and case managers to walk through the process of what that means to be seeking asylum or a refugee or whatever that looks like. We partner with them to help them through that process, through budgeting, etc. We also connect with the community. We had Greek Fest a couple weeks ago in Fort Wayne, and we wanted them to participate. We wanted them to be a part of the community because in that world, you're so isolated to the things that you're only known, but this allows for them to see Fort Wayne for what it has. But that's what my family did, but what can you do? I think the first thing you can do is meet an immigrant, like I did. I met Luchner at Pizza Hut, and there might be an immigrant next to you. So why not meet them and hear their story? I think you might be surprised by what you hear. Second, I think we can educate ourselves. Learn what it means to be an immigrant. Learn what it means to be a refugee, the migration story of what it takes to come into the United States. Educate ourselves to what the whole complicated, complex journey that it takes to get through to seek asylum in those processes. And lastly, I think invest in or support housing. I think housing is a major issue in the United States. And I think one thing that we can do is help or invest in housing for these refugees, asylum seekers, and immigrants. Because I believe that as this grows and that you allow for refugees, immigrants to grow this sense of belonging, that hopefully they'll soon get to home ownership. Because I believe one of the greatest ways to alleviate poverty is through capital and home ownership. So these are the things that we can do. And I hope that we can work together to accomplish this furthermore. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Colin. Next up is Jada Halliburton Ford. Jada is a senior philanthropy student and is minoring in medical sociology while pursuing a certificate in fundraising management through the fundraising school. In conjunction with her minor, she is currently participating in research with Dr. Mintis at the IU School of Liberal Arts on the magnitude of Indianapolis's philanthropic sector and its potential to contribute to support local African American communities that are experiencing high infant and maternal loss. Additionally, she is currently a volunteer development assistant for Listen to Our Future, which is a local education nonprofit that provides tutoring for BIPOC youth. In her free time, she enjoys exercising, learning how to cook new recipes, and spending time with friends and family. The title of Jada's presentation is Philanthropy's Role in Tackling High African American Infant Mortality in Indianapolis. We're currently putting her mic on.
Hello? Got it, okay. In the fall of 2021, I was with my sister in Walmart looking for baby clothes. I was looking for a blanket, a onesie, but I wasn't sure what my friend's baby would like. It was a baby after all. But a month later, we found out that the baby died and it was a stillbirth. And this statistic, I could be part of it, but I hope not. But it's very common across the United States with the African American women facing infant loss. Indianapolis specifically ranks 6th among the top 10 metropolitan areas that have high philanthropic participation, according to the National Corporation for Community Service. Yeah, in Indianapolis, we have a staggering issue with poverty and poor health outcomes. And our communities are located in food deserts, and that's a problem. So I want to talk about social inequalities in Indianapolis that contribute to the high infant mortality rates in our communities, and how philanthropic organizations can work to tackle that issue. So this graph here, take a look at it and see how high that line is. So communities like in Marion County have a higher need for health intervention because they have a lot of low-income communities and they're located in food deserts, like I mentioned. But there's also something called social determinants of health. So this can deal with social infrastructure, socioeconomic status, environment, lack of access to health care. And it's really common. In Marion County alone, 1 in 5 people are in poverty. but 31.4% of that statistic are African Americans. And that's a problem. And it reflects the conditions of our Black communities, and it also shows and reflects in our infant mortality rates as well. Here you can see the concentration in Marion County as well, but I want to talk about something as well. So when we look at health promotion in the United States, our healthcare system tends to use downstream endeavors. So instead of using this, we could be using a prevention method where we have preventative measures at a community level that are fighting poor health outcomes, but instead we tend to use last-minute health interventions. We tend to blame the patients, and we say it's your responsibility to not get sick, or it's your responsibility that your baby died. But that's not the case. So instead of putting an emphasis on the patient, let's look at our communities. We have an unfair clinical mentality that we have within our healthcare system. So I recommend an upstream approach. So if we collaborate with our healthcare professionals and our community leaders that have the same goal at fighting the same social barriers that have historically produced poor health outcomes, then we can do it. An example is March of Dimes in Oklahoma. Oklahoma County has a very similar landscape to Indianapolis, a very high population of African Americans in their community. March of Dimes funded Oklahoma County, this local organization, and they were able to have four groups, 4 task forces in their communities actively working with the community and the African Americans, and it actually really helped. It was a positive outcome, so high that their IMR, their infant mortality rate in Oklahoma, went down by 18%. As of today, it went down by 20%. That's amazing. But what about Indianapolis? We have a lot of philanthropic organizations. It's possible. So I was thinking if we could do this in Indianapolis, we could call it the Indianapolis Task Force Against Infant Mortality in African Americans. It's possible. We have the resources here, but we have to bring awareness to this problem. So if we bring awareness to this problem, more people will know about it. We can even propel grant making. We can increase fundraising. We can allow people in our communities to work together towards the same issue instead of trying to do it separately. It worked in Oklahoma, and it can definitely work in Indianapolis. So if we collaborate as local nonprofits, if we use the nonprofit sector, the government sector, the for-profit sector, then it's definitely, we can change the statistics. So I hope I can be a fundraiser and contribute to eradicating social inequalities in the African American community. And I just hope you all can take away from this that Black babies and Black moms matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Jada. Next up, we have Emily Eschbach. Emily is a first-year student studying philanthropic studies and marketing from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy and the Kelly School of Business. Originally from Auburn, Indiana, she grew up always being involved in her community. Since then, she's found her purpose lies within the people she serves. Emily is using her leadership and motivational skills to pursue a future in corporate social responsibility. Currently, she works in student services at the Lilly School and enjoys spending her time making TikToks with her coworkers. The title of Emily's presentation is Pink Out IUPUI.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. I love making TikToks every day. Best job ever. Anyway, to reintroduce myself, my name is Emily Eschbach, and I'm so excited to share with you today on why I wear pink and why I stand up for education for breast cancer and awareness. And so why is because I've had 3 generations of my family being diagnosed with breast cancer. So one of them is my great-grandmother. We called her Grandma Grape because anytime we went over to her house, she'd give us grapes, so how fitting. The second is my great-great-aunt, which is her sister, and then also my mom, and we'll hear a little bit about them. So my great-great-grandma, which Grandma Grape, she had a double mastectomy before I was born because she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she lived to be 98 years old. I know that her story is so unique because we got to cherish so much time with her after her diagnosis. And I know that her sister didn't get to have the same opportunity to spend that time with her, and she passed away before I could ever meet her. My third connection is with my mom. She's in the back today. I won't make her wave. She doesn't brag on herself enough, so I get the privilege to do that today. And so she's also in the right-hand corner, but something that she's always instilled in me is to get my mammogram at 35 years old, and that is because of my family history. For a person without any family history, their normal is 40 years old. And so my mom, being punctual like she is, she scheduled her mammogram on her 35th birthday. And unlucky for her, she found out the news that she had breast cancer on that day, her very first try. And so I know that she is here today because she on her 35th birthday got her mammogram instead of waiting until she was 40 years old. And so she had a lumpectomy, removed all the breast cancer, did not have to do any chemo and no radiation. And so we're so excited because early detection saved her life. And so she's been working for the last 10 years as the co-chair for Pink Out in our hometown of Auburn, Indiana. And so I've gotten to be her little wing woman for the last 10 years since, well, I don't have a baby picture on here, but I literally have grown up with Pink Out in my backyard and in my hometown. And so Pink Out IUPUI, I've seen it be successful in Auburn, and I want to bring it to IUPUI to address the faculty and staff that do not have their mammograms. So the nationwide stats, we've always heard that 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer in their lifetime. And to take that into seconds, that's 14 seconds someone is diagnosed with breast cancer. And so a third of women don't receive their yearly mammogram. And that's something preventable because it is free underneath the Affordable Care Act as preventative care. Lastly, people who get their diagnosis early are 93% higher to survive after 5 years. So these are very important statistics to keep in mind for the next slide. So how does this have to do with IUPUI at all? I searched at the beginning of last year, IUPUI breast cancer, and I only found 2 search results. That was IU Health and Zeta Tau Alpha. For the last year, I've served as BP4 Director of Philanthropy for Zeta Tau Alpha, where our national philanthropy is breast cancer awareness and education. I am very excited that our organization was up there in those search results, but it's also disappointing to know that a group of 60 women is significant enough to be on a community this size, and we don't have a solution for early detection on our campus, and a group of 60 are still making that impact. So we actually raised $33,000 this last year instead of 29, so I want to celebrate that a little bit. But 46.3% of our campus and our staff and faculty are women, and this is a solution. Those 1,600, not 16,000, don't let me get carried away there, do not have access to mammograms where we can meet them where they are. We are the #3 best employer for women by Forbes magazine for across the country of universities. In IUPUI, I'm sure you've noticed, we're so close to countless hospitals. I'm sure you passed one on your way here today. And yet we still only have 4 mammogram screenings close to us. So there is not a solution to meet faculty and staff where they are and to provide a mobile mammography until there's Pink Out IUPUI. And so what success looks like is Ascension St. Vincent will come in with their mobile mammography unit and provide our faculty and staff with an accountability partner to get their yearly mammogram on the same day. So hey, get your coworkers and get your yearly mammogram. We will also have a campus-wide capital campaign in collaboration with an influential foundation like Susan B. Komen. So we've heard of their Making Strides Walk Against Breast Cancer, right? That is a huge event just in the backyard of White River State Park. And so we can hold that accountability for each other until there's a cure. So this is the first philanthropy school in the world, and it's important for us to remind each other of our connections and to keep fighting for those 1 in 8.
Thank you, Emily. Next is Kimberly Hesterman. Kimberly is a first-year student at IUPUI, double majoring in philanthropic studies and business finance. She is originally from Dyer, Indiana, and graduated from Lake Central High School. Kimberly enjoys running in her free time and has raised money from various organizations for running the Chicago Marathon. Her greatest passions include mental health awareness and suicide prevention. She intends to advocate for change and make lasting impacts in the world by continuing to learn from those around her. The title of Kimberly's presentation is Systematic Intervention to Stop Suicide.
On average, there are 130 people who take their own lives every single day in America. That's 47,450 deaths per year just in this country. 90% of those who die by suicide had a diagnosed mental condition when at their death. The mental health crisis is a prevalent issue in our society and not only needs to be addressed more, but can only dissipate with systemic intervention. My why comes from my dad. Carl Hesterman passed away on July 4th, 2015, when I was 11 years old. He was 48 and had a lot more life to live. No one should ever feel like they can't get the help they need or that they have to fight their battles alone. That little girl in the pictures shouldn't have had her dad pass away the way that he did. I'm implementing ways to intervene in the systems created in our society in order to prevent suicide and to continue the conversation for mental health awareness. By focusing on the youth to start off with, will allow us to build the foundation for education. Suicide is the third leading cause of death in the ages of 10 to 19 in the United States. If we're able to educate the youth population, we'll be able to have better equipped, better educated, and more of society being able to ask for help that they need, to seek out the resources before it's too late. And if these learning programs can be implemented in elementary schools all the way up into adulthood, we'll be better equipped to cope with our feelings, emotions. And another issue in society is mental health with men. In 2020, men died by suicide 3.8 times more than women. This is obviously a very pressing issue in our society in that a lot of pressure is put on the male population for having to withhold feelings from fear of being looked down upon, whether that be in the workplace or is seen as a weakness. And it just can't be like this anymore. We need to make change. We need to continue the conversation about mental health and men and know that they're not alone. None of us are alone in this world. I wish my dad would have known that it was okay to ask for help and that it's not a sign of weakness. And if he got the help he needed, he might still be here today. Since he's not, I've made it my mission to advocate for mental health and suicide prevention. No one should ever have to go through something like this at a young age or in adulthood, ever. No one should ever have to have any of these experiences, but it's truly made me the person I am today and why I want to care for others and look out for people, and we should all look out for each other because everyone needs help at some point in their lives, and you should not be afraid to ask for that. And despite him being gone, I know, and even if the memories start to fade as time goes on, I know that my work and my missions will have him here with me always. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. All right, so that is it for the undergraduate competition, and we are moving on to the graduate competition. Our first graduate student is Milan Ball. Milan is a first-year master's student at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Fashion Design from the Fashion Institute of Technology. She is originally from Leesburg, Virginia, but spread her career between Washington, D.C., New York City, and Milan, Italy. She is a fashion expert with noteworthy experience as a designer, buyer, executive editor, marketing strategist, and consultant. In 2021, she founded her company Philan to transform the way purpose-driven brands do business. This venture led her to Bubble, a no-code app development software where she built Philan's MVP. She joined the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy to relaunch Philan, informed by a scholarly framework that binds academic research to her holistic knowledge of the industry. Currently, she serves as a graduate assistant at Pattern, supporting the development of Stitchworks in downtown Indianapolis. Milan plans to continue her education and forge a pathway as a thought leader in purpose-driven business and consumer activism. The title of Milan's presentation is Philan, Changing the World by Transforming the Marketplace.
Hello, I am Milan Ball. Two things have always been true about me. I have always loved fashion, and I have always been a dreamer. This little girl would be so proud of who she became because her dream became reality, and it didn't take too long for that to happen. Everything I thought I wanted to be a part of in the fashion industry happened for me by the age of 19. I checked off every goal I had. I went to the dream school. I got the dream job. I traveled the world, or at least outside of my own world. And my love for the industry grew with every uncharted experience. But the beautiful view that I had, eventually I had to pull back the curtain, and the hidden truths I discovered about the fashion industry made me realize that it wasn't much of a dream at all, it was a nightmare. And that nightmare is felt in just about every corner of the world. I realized I was complicit in the atrocities of a $1.7 trillion industry. As my career took shape, I increasingly became aware of the damage that was being caused by it. I learned about the social and environmental impact of our consumption. I learned how there are entire economies entire economies whose economic prosperity are tied to our waste. I learned about thousands of people being burned or buried alive in factories because their concerns weren't being heard by corporate organizations. I learned also that the US is the world's largest apparel market of any country, and that our businesses will manufacture in nations that don't strictly regulate against child labor because it's cheaper. I also learned that because of our free market, those federal regulations offshore are, they're kind of up in the air when that might happen. I've only scraped the surface of this issue, but the most important thing I learned is that for every ugly truth, there is a business that's been built to change the narrative. My mission, to change the world through transforming the marketplace. What would the world look like if every business were an ethical one? I might begin with fashion, but it's not a bad place to start because there's not a single thing that we put on our bodies that doesn't impact another human life in the global supply chain. There are a pair of hands involved in every product that we put on. So what you can do is think more consciously about the global supply chain and your part in it. Consider the power of your purchase, the weight of your consumption, and align with values that match, align brands that match with your values. As change agents of the third sector, we can address the intersectional opportunities of business and philanthropy. We can combat human rights crises perpetuated by big industry through demanding ethical standards and supporting social entrepreneurship. I founded my solution, Philan, a platform for purpose-driven business, when I was let go in the pandemic. I pivoted to consulting dozens of social entrepreneurs that I encountered as a buyer. During this time, I also took note of how the world was changing. Consumer activism has always been a part of our culture, from the Boston Tea Party to modern day cancel culture. But something incredible took place during the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020. We saw how the values driving our civil society converged with our consumption. And we saw companies rise and fall based on their expressed values and the legitimacy of their impact. The future of consumerism rests with a demand for mission-driven business. This is often achieved through thoughtful partnership with the third sector. But in the nonprofit world, we know that even the best intent can be harmful without the informed evaluative framework to measure impact. Philan exists to be that impact. At the corporate level, we equip businesses with the resources to operate ethically. We allow small companies to scale their efforts while consulting large companies on how to minimize their impact. At the consumer level, our portal allows everyday people to discover brands in line with their values. And through my research with the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, I hope to relaunch the app with a metrics tool that evaluates impact at the individual level according to the values of the consumer. In the business world, we know that consumers are 6 times more likely to shop from a purposeful brand. As it stands, many companies try to leverage that information by goodwashing, a term I compare to greenwashing in sustainability. Because not every company that calls itself good is good. That's why our tagline at Philan is the bold kind of good. Because the best businesses assume the boldest risk to make the most ethical impact. I hope you'll join me in my mission possible to change the world through transforming the marketplace. Thank you.
Thanks, Milan. Up next is Kalama Dennis. Kalama is a first-year doctoral student at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, and he holds a Master's of Arts degree from Wheaton College. Kalama is an Ankoli from northern Uganda. In Uganda, he has been working with Africa Renewal University, serving at a local church, and working with several nonprofits involved in community development among communities recovering from prolonged war. Kalama is passionate about African philanthropy, faith-based nonprofits, and their sustainability beyond American philanthropy. He plans to use his education first to establish a philanthropy research and training program in Uganda. Second, to support nonprofits working among forcefully displaced people as they engage with philanthropists. The title of Kalama's presentation is Forced Displacement and the Response of Philanthropy.
Imagine with me today if the 3 largest states in the United States, California, Texas, and Florida, everyone in these states was forcefully displaced out of their homes. Imagine with me if majority of those that were forcefully displaced were children. What would your response be? In 2021 alone, 89.3 million people worldwide were forcefully displaced. Now, this population is equivalent to the 3 largest states in the US. 36.5 million of these were children. Before us is a crisis. It is here and it is out there. In Uganda, where I come from, the country is the 3rd largest host of refugees globally. The country hosts close to 1.5 million refugees that have come to us. They've come from Sudan, Burundi, Congo, and many other countries. 94% of these that are with us live in dire states in camps, and 6% live in cities. 8 out of every 10 that move into Uganda is either a woman or a child. As I think about this, you may be wondering why I'm very passionate about forced displacement. When I was a child, a war broke out in northern Uganda, a war that was perpetrated by the Lord's Resistance Army. And for 22 years, we lived in the IDP camps. We survived on bare handouts from the non-profits. 2.5 million people from 4 different countries were driven out of their homes. 100,000 people were killed. and over 60,000 children, primarily boys, were abducted. Because we did survive on the non-profits, I was driven to engage and work for the non-profits. And so for the past 15 years, I've been involved among the non-profits, working among communities that are recovering from prolonged war. And one particular non-profit that we did begin in 2015 is KISA Transforms. And KISA Transforms is working primarily among South Sudanese refugees. As I think about the question of forced migration, I think of the discrepancies in responses. Two extremes that surround us. On one extreme, for people that seek to engage. On the other extreme, for those who seek to give excuses. On one extreme are those who seek to empower those that have forcefully been displaced. And on the other, those that would seek to even take away the little that they are left with. We live in a tension with one entity that seeks to embrace those that have forcefully been displaced. And on the other extreme, those that seek to exclude them, either by building bridges or by building walls. My experience with KISA Transforms has gotten me to really reflect and think about the responses to those that have forcefully been displaced in Uganda. And I think of a gap that majority of the entities and the organizations, one, are focused on the individual to meet needs in the short run and primarily by external agents. KISA Transforms is a local indigenous organization in northern Uganda that has a very simple and straightforward ABCD approach in responding primarily to refugees that have come to us. A, addressing trauma and mental health. Two, building skills and knowledge locally. And C, centered on households for all programs. And D, developing local catalysts to lead change. As I think about the elephant that is before us, a father of the Rainbow Nation of South Africa once asked, "How do you eat an entire elephant?" And he gave an answer, one bite at a time. Before us is an elephant, and the only way to consume it is one bite at a time. What KISA Transforms is doing is transforming one household at a time and affirming that this way, community as a whole would be transformed. What is the model? Embrace a household, a philosophy that is based on Ubuntu and not the individual. And as we embrace the household, we empower the family economically through savings group, village banking, and actually training in business. Two, equip the household with skills to enable them thrive. Three, educate the children with the hope that they will grow and be able to influence their society. And four, engage with issues of trauma. As I think about this, I think of empowering indigenous organizations and because they have an awareness that is very unique that outsiders don't have. Engaging philanthropically from the place of strength rather than weakness. Why? Showing people the value they have rather than the things that they lack. And what's the outcome of this? That more people will be actually productive. We're seeing them being more productive to the host. We're seeing that the process is more sustainable. And we see that the product outcome is holistic. This is a model that can be replicated beyond the 11 camps that are in Uganda to the other nations. As I think about forced displacement, I began by asking you, what would be your response if California, Texas, and Florida, people were forcefully displaced? I believe that each of us would care for those that have forcefully been displaced. And by care, I mean connect by learning what they're doing. Two, advocate by speaking. Three, resource by giving. And embrace by welcoming. I believe that caring is sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kilama. Next, we have Sarah Barba. Sarah is a second-year master's student at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. She received her undergraduate education at the University of Missouri, graduating with honors with a bachelor's of journalism and a bachelor of arts in political science. Sarah works full-time as a tax policy consultant and lobbyist in Washington, D.C., where she represents foundations and donors on Capitol Hill, and in the administration to advance legislation that will protect and expand charitable giving. Her passion, therefore, naturally lies in the intersection of philanthropy and public policy, including how the latter can be used to encourage the former. When she isn't advocating for or studying philanthropy, Sarah can be found snowboarding or golfing, depending on the weather. The title of Sarah's presentation is Financial Literacy Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Barba, and I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes convincing you why financial literacy education is an issue that philanthropy can address through public policy. There's a financial component to being a human being. Most of the financial decisions we make can actually impact our entire lives. I was raised by 2 accountants, so I was very privileged in being able to learn financial decision-making skills early on. One of the decisions that I had to make, a tough decision, I was able to inform with financial decision-making skills, was where I would go to college. And because I understood the implications of the financial decision that college is, I was able to inform that decision with that information and actually end up graduating debt-free. The only reason I was able to do that, though, is because of what I learned from my accountant parents and what I learned through voluntary programs that were actually sponsored by Philanthropy in my public school. These 2 pictures on the screen actually come from one of the programs that I participated in as an elementary and middle school student that taught valuable skills like how to balance a checkbook, how to save for big purchases, and on the flip side, what the repercussions are of overspending. I stand up here and I wonder, why is this not required curriculum? The statistics are jarring around financial literacy in this country. Only a little over half of American adults are considered financially literate, but the statistics around students are even more concerning. There are a multitude of reasons that these statistics could exist, but one gaping hole is this lack of nationwide financial literacy curriculum requirements in the states. There are about half of the states in our country require some sort of offering of financial literacy or personal finance curriculum, but only half of those actually make it a requirement for graduation. And when it is offered and it's voluntary, it often requires a financial commitment, which leads to further inequities in access. And the fallout from this cannot be overstated. Those who are less financially literate are more likely to default on their debt. They are more likely to fall victim to financial scams, all of which lead to more reliance on nonprofit and government programs. This can create this cycle of financial illiteracy where it spans generations and it therefore exacerbates existing wealth gaps already in our country. So why is now the time? Well, we are in crisis mode. The Biden administration just unveiled a loan forgiveness program that has been met with mixed reactions, and regardless of what your reaction is to the forgiveness program, the reality is that the bill is going to come down on the government and therefore on American taxpayers. But I ask you this: if we are not equipping our young people through their education with the tools to make informed financial decisions, how can we expect them to understand the implications and consequences of the commitments that they're making at 18 years old? And if we're not using education to set people up for success in adulthood, why are we educating them? And finally, if we could do something to take an actionable step toward reducing or eliminating an issue like this in the future, would that not be wonderful? Through my work in public policy, I have learned the power of collaboration and coalition building to achieve widespread policy change. Philanthropy is powerful on its own, but it's often dwarfed in comparison to government budgets, both at the federal and state level. You can see here, actually, just the budget alone of one program that was implemented this year exceeded the all charitable giving in the state of Colorado. So if instead of working on its own, philanthropy can come together with nonprofits, government, and concerned businesses to advance public policy that will achieve greater financial literacy in students, it can increase financial literacy rates. I propose to try this in one state first, Colorado. They currently have a legislature that has indicated an interest in more robust financial literacy policies. And they have funders and grantees, like those that I benefited from, who already are doing the work and can provide the expertise. If this effort to advance a piece of legislation that would not just require the offering of, but actually make financial literacy and personal finance curriculum a requirement for graduation can be successful, we can begin to address inequities and increase economic mobility among young Coloradans. And the great part is that it's scalable, and it's not just in Colorado that we can do this, but we can take it to other states and use it with model bills to advance financial literacy education across the nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Next to speak is Ronnie Plasters. Ronnie is a third-year doctoral student studying the intersection of religion and philanthropy. He returned to academia after 15 years serving as a director of development for the University of Chicago and the University of California, Berkeley. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology from Wheaton College and a Master's of Arts in Religious Studies from the University of Dayton. He also earned his certificate in fundraising management from the Fundraising School. He serves as the Lake Institute on Faith and Giving's Enright Fellow and teaches undergraduate philanthropy courses here at the school. When he isn't researching or teaching, you might find him running, traveling the world, advising nonprofits, or mentoring first-generation college students. The title of Ronnie's presentation is Living Legacies.
I'm the youngest of 5. My parents had me when they were 40, which means that funerals were a natural part of my experience growing up, even if they felt just a little bit off to me. So whenever I was in grad school, I decided to study this phenomenon and ask some questions about the impulses for why people might indulge this ritual. One thing I discovered is that traditional funerals aren't really that traditional. In fact, they're a byproduct of the Civil War and an unregulated market over time. But burial is in fact timeless and universal. There are 8,000 deaths per day across the globe. So it's not just about me or my family. In fact, in burial, each of us, each of you, has a legacy. When we think about legacies, though, we often think about planned giving, right? And this is a topic of vast conversation. And yet, when it comes to burials, we're fairly silent. But I want to change that silence. I want to break it. So today, I'm going to talk about 3 challenges that exist in burial. I'm going to use US data to do that work. Then I'm going to honor the work that's already being done in the field. And finally, I'm going to propose research. This research is going to fill these gaps. It's going to fit in with what the sector is already doing. So, let's dig in. Burial begins, thank you. Burial begins after a proclamation of death. The body, now a corpse, leaves the medical industry. It enters the funereal industry. And after that, then it's at this juncture that we experience these challenges, all of which thwart injustice. I'm going to highlight just 3 of these challenges for you. I'm going to begin with environmental challenges. Now, carbon emissions are really quite high. The average barrel is 250 pounds of carbon released. At cremation is 140 pounds of carbon released into our society. But collectively, we could fill a swimming pool with the amount of formaldehyde we're putting into our drinking water. You also think about the amount of lumber that we bring into the world. We're going to back that one up, actually. The amount of lumber we bring into the world. 450 acres of lumber cut. We could build 4 million homes with the amount of coffins that we're burying. In addition, we're treating we're treating 100,000 cemeteries with pesticides. We're watering them, causing droughts across the world, across our nation. Compounded, these environmental impacts are unsustainable. They're a leading contributor of global warming, and also they're generational injustice. So let's consider then instead now some of the fiscal impacts. The average funeral costing $8,000 last year, cremation $7,000. It wasn't until 1960, though, that we actually changed regulations with Jessica Mitford, The American Way of Death, her book becoming a national bestseller. But we know even though that Congress passed the Funeral Act back then, in the 1960s, this industry still rakes in $14 billion. Guess what? For a lot of people, it's too expensive to die. And finally, let's ponder then relational justice. You might have heard of mortuary segregation. It happens, and it happened, and it's still happening today. And also, whenever we think about this, we want to consider the fact that when we outsource burial, we break apart relationships. Instead of bowling alone, it might be that we're dying alone instead. These three injustices by themselves, they generate alarming challenges that implicates each of us in this room. But there's a nonprofit response. It might be a bit nascent, but it's definitely there. So we have folks that are advocating for us already. These organizations like the Green Burial Council, the National Conservation Council, they are working to promote research and disseminate information to folks just like us in this room. We also know that we have collaboration efforts. We know that we have opportunities for the nonprofit sector to work together to do this kind of work. And here I'm going to highlight the positive role of religion. In fact, religion can be a source and a place of value building today, and it can change what we do now into the future. And finally, service delivery. Right now, we do have over 350 green cemeteries operational in the country. Now, we've quickly identified why this topic matters to me, why it should matter to each of you here in this room. And we have talked about what this sector is currently doing. What we haven't talked about, though, are those gaps. And this is where we can make a difference. With groundbreaking research. So today, only 5% of burials are in fact green, despite 60% of Americans saying they want to do this work. So we have to transform and change the ways that we go about doing this. I'm proposing then that we interview religious leaders. I'm proposing that we observe ethnographically what's happening in the field. I'm also want to investigate burial pollution quantitatively rather, to figure out what does it mean to be in places where the burial waste falls into your communities. And I also want to test philanthropic impulse. I want to know if this transforms the ways that we make burial decisions. So we're going to have a positive future here, you and me, together. What we're going to do is we're going to invest in that research that leads us to action, and we're going to transform a vision where we in this society don't have to deal with burial waste. It takes about $3,000 to conduct 30 interviews on the ground, so we can really make this difference together. Thank you for investing in transforming our world by starting here today.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Last but certainly not least is Nazmul Haque. Nazmul is a first-year master's student at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. Originally, he's from Bangladesh and completed his undergraduate and graduate degrees in political science from the University of Dhaka in 2016 and 2017. Currently, Nazmul is assisting the research team of the Muslim Philanthropy Initiative as a graduate assistant. His passion for philanthropy emerges from his voluntary activities and professional tenure with numerous research and program teams. His research interests cover international labor migration, refugees and statelessness, civil societies and nonprofit sector, and human rights. The title of Nazmul's presentation is Weekend School for Street Children in Bangladesh.
Thank you. So I will start with some shocking statistics. That Bangladesh is a small country, so it has 1.6 million street children right now, and most of them, almost 75%, are living in Dhaka. If we talk about world, then we actually don't know the exact number. But in 1989, it was 100 million. So the situation, definitely become the worst. So why I'm talking about street children right now? It started in 2009 when I was volunteering a program that is Sky Observation Camp. Yeah, that white shirt boy is me. So I was assisting a boy to watch a moon through a telescope. That is the first time I actually interact with street children in Bangladesh. And I learned their way of living, how do they live, how do they collect their foods and clothes and etc. So it started from 2009 and it never ended. I always always participate various kinds of activities and voluntary activities and try to help them with numerous ways during these all 13 years. But I was shocked and I find is totally devastated when it was in 2020. I mean, the government was implementing a countrywide lockdown due to the COVID-19 health emergencies. So we have home, we have clothes, we have foods, but that particular children are facing shortage of everything. They have none of them. So they live a miserable life during that time. I try to help, but definitely I'm as a one person, I feel the shortage of resources. So as they are entirely depends on the street for their livelihood, they become the vulnerable to any kind of abuses. It includes physical, psychological, and sexual. And in Bangladesh, there is a common drugs that is called dandy. You can see the middle of the picture. It's glue sniffing. It's the cheapest drugs, but it's the more dangerous drugs. It only costs 10 cents to get that. But when I asked several of them, why, you know, this is bad for health, but why do you take this? They said, I take this because I want to forget the pain of hunger, pain of starvation, and pain of everything. So that's why I take this. So as a human being, we are actually privileged in the society, privileged part. So it's our duty to address this humanitarian crisis. So it can be done by alone. It's a collective. It requires a collective actions. So, I mean, like me, there are a lot of students and a lot of people in Bangladesh. Most of them, I mean, there are a lot of initiatives actually active right now. But there is a problem in those initiatives. First one is the street schools. It was actually initiated by university students, I mean, mostly undergraduate students. But the problem is that it entirely depends on one person. So when the particular person graduated or moved to another city, the school closed. And some organizations actually do some kinds of activities, but the problem is that that entirely depends on funds, and most of the time those programs are actually side programs, not the main programs. So what is I am proposing is school for life. There will be a school, community weekend school. So it will be start morning to afternoon. We'll teach basic mathematics, language. We'll also provide basic professional training. We'll provide psychological training for the distressed children. We'll give some kind of entertainment so that they can actually feel like home. So what goals actually, what impacts I'm expecting right now? I'm expecting in the first year, I will connect the volunteers who actually want to help those children. It will be community level, so the initiative is a little more small and will actually depend on individual funds and crowdfunding. In next 5 years, we will try to connect the government in schools and vocational institutions so that we can give some sorts of certification and some sorts of training so that they can develop their career. And later on, in the next 5 years, we will try to include a program in the national policy so that they can be the problem can be addressed nationally. That is what I'm proposing right now. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nazmul. Let's have one last round of applause for all of our presenters.
Johnson.
Thank you to all of our presenters for their participation in this competition. I know all of us who listened here are humbled and inspired by your passions and your innovative commitment to transforming our world that is so deeply in need. At this time, we'd like to ask the Board of Visitors to follow Pamela Clark out of the auditorium for deliberation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for waiting for the Board of Visitors to engage in their deliberations. I must say that I'm very pleased that I wasn't part of the decision-making process because I wouldn't know where to begin. And I want to congratulate the students on an amazing job. I think you are all winners, but as this is a learning opportunity, our Board of Visitors try to make some judicious choices. So you should all be proud of the wonderful job you did. Can we just give a round of applause to all of our students, please? So I will first announce the undergraduate students going from third place to first place. If you wouldn't mind coming up when your name is announced and stand on the podium, and we can make sure we have lots of wonderful photos for you to share with your friends and family. In the undergraduate category, third place goes to Colin Jester. Congratulations, Colin. Second place in the undergraduate category goes to Emily Eschbach. Congratulations, Emily. First place in the undergraduate category in the Mission Possible competition goes to Jada Halliburton Ford. Congratulations, Jada. Now to the graduate category in the Mission Possible competition. Third place goes to Sarah Barba. Congratulations, Sarah. Second place goes to Milan Ball. Congratulations, Milan. And finally, in first place in the graduate category for the Mission Possible competition, first place goes to Kalama Dennis. Congratulations, Kalama. Please join me in another round of applause for our wonderful Mission Possible winners. And thank you to our Board of Visitors and for our audience for being with us today. Lots of photos. Shall I join for one of those photos? Everybody come up. Yes, please. Yes, yes. Can we have all the contestants please come up, and also our MCs as well? Come on up. Come on up. Come on up. And also Pamela Clark, come on up. Yeah. Come on. Do you want me to be in the middle? Where's the middle?
Now we're gonna have to act like we like each other. This isn't gonna work. Yeah, I think. Yeah, some of you are gonna have to. Jada, come on. Undergrad students, we can do the little squad thing here. There we go. Perfect. All right. I can't do this for very long. Tony, scoot over.